Hello and welcome to the Influence Hour. This is your culture and news editorial show presented by AFTV5, and I am your host, media personality and poet, Kinyo.
Like I'm on my prime, feel like this is my prime time, catch me in the limelight, tell my mom I'll be fine,
You're turning into the very first episode of Influence Hour, and what is this show going to be? You know, we're carving a space out in media, because media is one of the greatest powers we have in today's day and age, and if we don't use that power responsibly, and if we don't use that power to make change, then what is it that we're actually doing? Today on the docket, I have a number of really interesting issues. For instance, we want to talk about conflict minerals. And here at AFTV5, we also want to talk about the recent March conference that AFTV5 had. We also want to talk about a little bit of footage that we have of presidential hopeful from Cameroon. We have Akere Muna. We want to talk about that a little bit. And we're going to be winding all this together to hopefully give you a super interesting look into some culturally relevant news that's going on today. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce my guest and the guy who's going to be talking about stuff with me today. His name is Kevin Prince, and he's an author of a book called Ideas of Illusion, which is right here. I think I'm just going to leave that propped up so people can see it. This is his first work of fiction. He's actually a hip-hop artist. Mr. Composition was born and raised in San Antonio. Which is pretty awesome. And he recently did his Ancestry.com, and he found out that his roots span, you know, the west coast of Africa, which you can tell. He looks like he has that in him. It's pretty obvious. It's pretty clear. And then he actually found out that he even has roots going to Europe. He has roots that go even into South America. How are you doing today, Mr. Composition?
I'm good. I'm feeling blessed and hopeful.
Yeah.
So I'm excited.
What are we going to do? Are we going to do Mr. Composition or Kevin Prince for this interview? I know you go by both.
Mr. Composition.
Okay. So I want to start off by talking, because I feel like it's very connected to this idea of culture. Recently, we both actually, and thank you for being my guest, my good friend. He's a really good friend of mine. We work together a lot. We recently both traveled to Japan earlier this month. How was that?
Oh man, there's still unpacking of how dope it is, you know, with Japan. There's so many things that you can take from there, like the fact that they plan out everything politically, economically, like 100 years in advance, you know, and they're able to use that structure to govern the rest of, you know, their country.
Very cool.
Know? And yeah, there's so much out there.
That was a cool little tidbit, and it was a lot of fun. I have to say, I was there. I've lifelong, you know, I've always wanted to go to Japan, and so we're also planning a trip later on. Besides going to lots of different places in the U.S., Nashville and stuff like that, in New York, we're also planning to end up in Nigeria in October of this year, 2018. So your book, I'm gonna tie this in. I'm gonna weave a little tapestry for the people out there. Your book, Ideas of Illusion, it centers around a African American tech entrepreneur. And from there, you know, it goes into a dream sequence of, you know, possibilities. It touches on privacy, which is something huge that we're dealing with Facebook right now. I don't know anyone who's seen, you know, Facebook is on a huge PR campaign right now to let people know, hey, we're going to treat your privacy a lot more seriously. And that's super interesting to me, because it makes me think that Facebook might become a privacy pioneer, just because of their scale and just because it's actually going to become one of their major products as privacy insecurity becomes a really big issue. And you get really big on that in the book. Why was privacy privacy, security, privacy technology so big in your book?
Oh, because I was, it's based in the year 2025, which now isn't anywhere near as far away. Like at the time that I wrote it, it was probably around 2015, so I was like 10 years, but then it's just like, oh
Yeah,
wow, that's
3 years ago.
creeping up,
Yeah.
super, super close. And, the one thing that I noticed was that there was, I worked in call centers, so a lot of older people would call in, or just people in general saying, how when they lost their phone, someone was able to get into it,
Right.
or,
Okay.
they would call in and just say that their email was hacked. We would get a lot of hacked emails. You would get a lot of people online that would say, oh, my Facebook account was hacked, and, all these different things. And so I was just like, well, what if there was and the underlying and main theme of all of that is that the government has full access to that, whether or not they're able to use it or anything, just to be able to look through and skim through, and you have all of this information.
Yeah.
That information in the wrong hands.
It's super interesting. Yeah. I'm one of those people who is not afraid at all of the government getting into my personal stuff, but I understand why so many people are, because they feel like they have stuff in there that they're hiding from the world. To those people, all I have to do is say, you're about to get exposed. That's
Well,
what you get. But of course, like the credit card stuff,
Yeah.
that's super huge. You don't want people stealing your credit card.
But even like with accounts, like the way that I see privacy is it's kind of, whenever I thought of privacy, I always thought of being a kid. And my mom or dad would be like, well, you don't got no privacy. Like,
Yeah.
even if you had your own room or anything like that, like, you don't pay no bills, you don't have no privacy. So, we have these things called diaries or journals
Yeah.
or different things that we
And now
would
Facebook is
have.
so much of everybody's diary.
Exactly. And what's so ironic about it is that so many people are so concerned with privacy. Like, I looked at it when I did the book as this thing, like, okay, this is a concern for everybody. Should it be a concern? I don't 100%, I think it's, and that's the idea of illusion,
Yeah.
pun intended, is that, ironically, so many people are screaming for privacy, but they put all their information online for free.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? If people could get a pizza, I feel like 10 minutes faster, they'd probably give out their social security numbers. So everyone who's out there complaining about privacy, I don't believe you. Honestly, people would probably upload nudes if it meant that they could get free McDonald's delivery. So, but anyway, let's continue. I want to talk about how, and I want to make sure people see the book and they go check it out. You can get this book on Amazon. It's there. And then you can also go to your website, dabtroll.com. We'll put some links in the description and things like that. So what I want to get to in Japan, and I'm going to use this to jump into my next topic, which is the possibility of doing business, doing more business in Africa. But the way I want to get there is going to Japan. We saw the combination of culture, commerce, media, and technology. Technology exports, and then we also saw the tourism commerce. And Japan was such a great example of maximizing on the value of culture to be able to use it as like a sort of genre to play along with it. I feel like a lot of anime is really playing along with those things, and Japan does a really good job in general of exporting its culture and specializing in those things that it's become known for, like technology. And so that was really cool, and it kind of, for me especially, I recently went to the Pan-African Festival, and that's where I learned about AFTV5's March conference that I didn't get to go to this year, but next year I'm hoping to go to. And if you want to check that out, definitely go to find AFTV online. But the realizing that Africa has so much potential because of the depth of culture, and the fact that it's known for so many things, but it's not receiving the profits of a lot of those things. So it's known for being, one of the richest countries in minerals, and yet we still have problems with access to basic resources, basic infrastructure. We're having a problem with that. And why is that? And I really feel like a big reason that Africa is able to be abused so much is because of media's conversation around it? Are we having the conversations about what's going on in Africa the way that we need to? Why are we allowing Africa to be taken advantage of? Is it because so much of the country is hidden and unseen? So many people don't even know that there are major cities in Africa. They say, "What's Africa like?" I had someone say this to me recently. What's Africa like? Are there lots of huts and stuff like that? And I'm like, you know what? Yeah, but most people live in cities. Just like if you go to, what is it, like some small cities in Texas, you'll think you're in a village. But there's obviously San Antonio. There's huge cities in Africa, So what if we actually started talking about some of these things, and we refused to let them exist in silence? What if we talked about these things so loudly that it was impossible for these things to be quiet? What if we did business directly with some of these small businesses in Africa? In the recent poem that I wrote for 2017, I said that we can kind of reach out to these countries that maybe our government isn't doing what it needs to do. We can reach out by building businesses in these countries, by building business connections in these countries. We can also do it by refusing to buy from all of these companies which unethically, deal with Africa, that unethically, that are okay with having their materials sourced in an unethical way. I recently found a website called enoughproject.org, and they rank businesses based on their progress of eliminating unethical practices in the sourcing of their minerals. So I say that it's getting pretty close to where we could refuse to buy from any company that doesn't make an intentional effort to show that they are respecting the people of Africa. Exploitation, because exploitation is possible, is not a good excuse. It's time to hold some of these larger companies way more accountable, So from anyone who creates smartphones to iPhones, the companies like Netflix, Disney, and other companies that buy iPhones, tablets, and all those things too, you have to hold them accountable too, And if we don't, we're part of the problem. We're spending money to proliferate suffering. You guys just got a little sample of what my poetry style is about, and I hope you took a lot of that to heart. And let's jump into and have some discussion on some of these issues. What do you think about some of the huge problems we're having with just exploitation of Africa?
Man,
exploitation.
It's interesting you said that. Why is so much of Africa hidden? We talk about culture and things like that, but I feel like a lot of Africa is hidden because of lack of correct history that's being put out. You have something like Wakanda, or Black
Wakanda
Panther,
from Black Panther.
Where it was hidden.
Yeah.
And
literally.
Yeah, literally. And I think that if we reverse it, and instead of looking at Wakanda as being hidden, and the little small portion of it, which is the type of farmland and everything like that, the huts and everything like that they showed that was surrounding Wakanda, I think that that's a perfect analogy as far as Africa in general, where the majority of it is hidden to the rest of the world, and a small percentage of it is actually what's shown, and that's what people think is the majority of Africa. So when you deal with people who are ignorant and they're just all like, oh yeah, in jungles and everything like that, like do your research. You realize that like there's
shameful
more jungles.
Hey, it's so deep, It's not just the cities. I recently got invited to someone's going away party, and the going away party just happened to be African themed, right?
Yeah.
And then people were like, "Oh, this is going to be really cool." So I was like the sixth comment in there, and I was like, guys, I'm probably going to win this because I literally just got some really good gear, like some really awesome modern gear from Africa as far as tops that I'm going to wear to this thing, and I'm actually going to win. But the people who commented above me, you know how Facebook has these new GIF functions. So one of the GIFs was a Timon GIF from wait, who's Timon's the small one, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it was a Timon gif, and Timon was he was wearing like something, some like a Lion King reference. There was one Coming to America reference, Eddie Murphy and whoever that was, and he was wearing his like some like fur coat and like a big gold chain or something like that. And then there was I think I don't remember what movie it was, but it was like a quote that said like "This is Africa." I can't remember. Someone out there will probably know what I'm talking about. But it's like when it comes to Africa, the education of the culture and the media is so terrible. But you know what? That's why you've tuned into this episode. This is just the first episode of what we're doing here at AFTV, and they have a lot of stuff. So I mean, if you start watching some of the more movies, there's reasons why maybe people don't watch a lot of the Nigerian movies, but there's Nollywood. Just like there's Hollywood, there's Nollywood. There's a lot of Nigerian movies coming out. Netflix has a lot of Nigerian movies on it. And then when it comes to doing business in these countries, I do want to say that there are some pretty cool examples that I want to shout out. We have some, AFTV has some really awesome footage of the USBACC annual OTC conference. I'm going to read a little bit about the USBACC. It was established in 2010 and continues to be a focal point for business partnerships with Africa. The U.S. Bilateral African Chamber of Commerce has a strong network at the local and international, with local and international business community, and it helps its members in developing trade investment opportunities in the emerging markets across Africa. Now, this specific conference, the annual OTC, the OTC African Delegation reception, that event helped you meet with other energy executives from Africa and confer on new and emerging markets in the oil and gas industries and developing sectors. So conferences, I'm really huge on conferences. My company, Project Forward, we had our first conference, and your company was also a part of that. We had our first conference last year, HWC, and for bringing people together, it's amazing. Yeah. So for doing business in Africa, I didn't get to go to this again. This was the March, a conference that that AFTV actually hosted in March. And if you looked at the keynotes there, a lot of it was doing business in Africa. I think I looked at like 2 pages of the keynote. I have to go next year. A lot of the keynotes were doing business in Africa. And the big companies are already on this. Yeah. And they're doing a really good job of making inroads. I just saw an article, let me see if I can find it really fast. I saw an article, okay, yeah. This was McKinsey and Company, but it says winning in Africa's consumer market, and it's not talking about African businesses. This is consumer electronics. It's not talking about African businesses doing a great job in consumer electronics. It's talking about how other businesses who make consumer electronics are making inroads into Africa. So they're exporting, the companies are exploiting these these countries in Africa. They're exploiting the labor. And then what they're doing is sending it, other places like China, exploiting labor there also. And then they're making these devices, and then they're talking about how they can, be victorious in selling these items back to Africa. And it's so interesting that there isn't enough conversation about doing business in actual Africa. But that's what this conference is really cool. So definitely go to AFTV, check out the more information on that conference. And I know when we do the expansion tour and we want to go to Nigeria in October, our focus is going to be in creating, cultural goods with Africa, connecting back there, creating business connections there, just like we do. If you want to see more about the expansion tour, also, go to projectforward.tv/expansion, and you can see projectforward.tv is the website. You can see a lot more about the expansion. What interests you about connecting back to Africa, getting your book over there, maybe putting it up in some African bookstores, maybe bringing some African books back here? What interests you about that whole idea?
I've always been fascinated with Africa in general, but like as far as the business sense, and I always looked at different things, and I would be super hopeful. Like when I saw Akon was delivering as far as all of these solar panels and stuff to Africa, and then I found out that what's going to end up happening is that they're outsourcing like people from China to work there instead of like actual Africans that are there. So like my thing with doing business is the fact that there's literally an abundance of resources there all around. Like my thing is, you know, I've seen people make earth ships or these homes that are made out of like tire and dirt, these super dope solar panel homes and things like that. And with me doing business, it would be the most awesome thing because I'm looking at textiles, I'm looking at backpacks, I'm looking at socks, I'm looking at herbs, you know, different things like that. And to be able to have that source to where it's just all like boom from Africa to here, you know, to, you know, the relatives, the family that's here in the Americas, and just allowing that money to generate back and forth. Like, you know, if I get some black soap from Amazon that comes directly from Africa. So, you know, if we're able to continue to make these business moves like that, you know, to where it's just like, you know, we don't have to, the reason why these bigger companies have their particular hands in it is due to years of generational wealth and stealing and all different other types of things. But here in 2018, where we have something like the internet, you know, we're able to go directly to those people, message them, you know, contact them and do business directly with them. You know, even if it's on a small level, to be able to export some goods from there and then have it out here and then vice versa. And
I love it.
You know,
I love, if you know me, like when it comes to entrepreneurial stuff, I like starting at the bottom level. And I think that's super cool. I love that so much. I hope I didn't cut you off.
No.
Did I? Okay, very cool. You didn't? Okay. One thing I want to say is I think we're getting to a really cool place of being able to hold people accountable. That is where we're at on a whole new level. I mean, we did go through, you know, there's the whole industrialization phase. And what that allowed us to do was ramp up production of everything for the purpose of, you know, having tons of people, you know, building really big cities really fast. But during that whole process, what we lost touch with was quality and culture. You know, culture was stripped away from a lot of people, and quality was stripped away from a lot of products. But not anymore. With accountability, we're moving into a new technological age where we can see everything that's going on. Everything is being filmed. And that's why we're having so many conflicts. It's because there are so many problems that are getting solved. So I'm not running away from conflict. Let's have way more conflict. Conflict all the time. No conflict minerals, but conflict. Let's understand conflict. Let's use the power. I'm going to jump back to the little ranking system on enoughproject.com just so you can get a sample of what's going on when it comes to holding some of these companies accountable. And this is from 2012. And so the top 3 companies that are doing a really good job, you have Intel, HP, SanDisk. They're doing a pretty good job, apparently, above 30%, according to this chart, of getting rid of conflict minerals. And I'm sure this is just the beginning, you know, because statistics like these are hard to gather. Apple's kind of up there, too. They're in the top 10 or so. At the bottom, companies that are moving the slowest, Nintendo, which is very interesting. Nintendo is apparently not making any progress. That's a Japanese company, so that's where we just came from. Maybe we can do a little bit of work of binding this Japan and Nigeria in a more ethical way, because the cultures are so similar and yet so different. And then you have companies like HTC and Sharp are also there at the bottom. It's just, I definitely want you to check this out. I'm going to like screenshot this right now just so I can remember to post this little graphic up. So you can definitely check that out and start holding some of these companies accountable, and then start looking for really ground, what do they call that thing when it's ground roots?
Grassroots.
Grassroots. you can find some really grassroots methods to connect yourself to some ethical companies in these fields.
And you know, and what another thing we have to hold accountable is like literally ourselves and the power of our purchasing power.
And not just your purchasing power, the media you watch. We make all the decisions. The world is full of us, so we get to decide what it is that we're going to support. And especially we figured out with movies like Black Panther, when we can get excited. When we get excited about something and we can find the cultural relevance, we can totally blow up anything we want.
Exactly.
I wanted to touch on one thing with accountability. Blockchain, there's actually some really cool new stuff coming out from blockchain, where blockchain is going to be able to verify supply chains. So some companies are thinking about making the transition to where in the same way that blockchain is verified by a community, blockchain is super complicated, but you're going to get a little quick as far as I know about it. Blockchain, in the same way that it verifies